Welcome to the Omega Author Talk with founder of Adaptive Leadership Strategies, Brenda Harrington, on her new book, Access Denied, Addressing Workplace Disparities and Discrimination. My name is Tamara Perceval. I'm a quality supervisor at Boston Scientific, and I will be moderating this event this evening. How about we get started? Brenda, your book is absolutely a good read. I enjoyed reading it. The stories were just amazing and so relatable. We have found the book to be a detailed account of numerous people that have experienced workplace disparities, and you shed a lot of light on the inspiration of that. Can you shed some more light on the inspiration behind the book?
Sure. Well, first of all, Tamara, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. The inspiration really is a result of things that have happened in recent years that made me reflect on things that I've experienced and experiences of others that I'm aware of over many years. And I interpreted that almost as a call to action. A lot of the things that I reflect on that I experienced early in my career, over the course of my career, are still happening. What concerned me is that people who are dealing with some of these things now, for whatever reason, don't really seem to be prepared for how to navigate some of the challenges and address the issues. And so that's where I felt it was almost a responsibility to speak up and address it in whatever way that I could.
Nice. That's awesome. That's good to know. And why this book? Why now?
Well, this book, because I felt it was important to share real stories. It's not fiction. These are things that happen to real people and are happening to real people. For readers, they'll see that this is not just a historical perspective. There are things that happened while I was writing the book, okay, that are included in the book, all right? The why now is that I just feel there's a sense of urgency. When I think about all of the other things that are happening in our society, right? I just feel like time's a wasting. We have got to address things in a meaningful way, whatever that means to each of us. So I feel like we all have a responsibility to do something, to do whatever we can do. And this is my something right now.
That's awesome. Awesome. Who was this book for?
I think of the audience for the book. Well, the short answer is everybody. Yes. I don't know an author that wouldn't say that. But I think of three audiences. The primary audience is really people who identify as BIPOC, Black Americans, African Americans, or as part of a minority group who are having questionable experiences in the workplace, who are really thinking about what they're facing at work and need tools and resources to at least process or think about how to address some of these circumstances they're experiencing in a meaningful way. The secondary audience is really organizational leaders, HR and talent management people leaders who are committed to and sincere about learning more about diversity and inclusion, and who really want to have a positive influence on the culture of their organizations. And then the tertiary audience is basically members of the dominant group, that really don't understand what our perspective is like, so it's an opportunity for them to walk in our shoes.
I love that. And this book, I'll tell you, Brenda, came at a perfect time for me too, when I came across it, because as a newly supervisor in the role that I'm in now, it was very important for me to learn some things from this book, and especially for some of the stories. So I was just like, talk about timing. I was just like, wow, there was some valid points in there that I jotted down that will help me in future hiring and making my team, of course, as diverse as possible. So it's great. Thank you.
I'm glad. You're welcome.
So myself included, I've always heard that people say we must work, at least twice as hard as our white counterparts, right? Why do you feel this way? And the second part to that is, what can we do to overcome this? to level the playing field?
Listen, it's not me that feels this way necessarily. It's part of our history. It's embedded in our history.
Right.
When an entire society holds it as truth that we are less than, we are not as smart as, we are not as competent, and we're less capable, we really have to go into overdrive to prove that the opposite, that's not the case. And I think that story is really told in chapter 4 with Samantha, right? Yep. And some of the things, the challenges that individual faced as she was striving, not only to climb the ladder, but just to get into a position of choice that she was well qualified for. And so, it's not really just my line of thinking. It's unfortunately part of our history.
Mm-hmm. So true.
When you talk about overcoming it and trying to level the playing field, I think that it's not just up to us, right? And this is where obviously we need allies, but there are a couple of things that we really need to pay attention to. One, we've got to be prepared, right? We've got to have our act together, right? We have to have our facts straight. But we also have to demonstrate our value and our worth by being persistent, like Samantha was persistent in chapter 4, right? And we have to build in accountabilities. And so it's almost like we have to be contracting all the time. I talk about the importance of having a strategy. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of going to work and coming home and leaving the politics behind, right? So we really have to be intentional about how we hold others accountable for the things that are meaningful and important to us.
Awesome. My next question would be, how do we open discussions with our peers without coming across as aggressive or being seen as seeking sympathy, or even worse, being pitied?
There are a lot of ways to address the challenges that we face without making it personal. So I think that if we stick to the facts, the reality of what's happening, and really focus on the business purpose, how we're showing up, how we're contributing, and aligning that with whatever else is happening, just really having a professional business conversation and letting the rest speak for itself, okay? You'll see a reference in the book to something called discriminatory gaslighting, a term that was coined by Dr. Christy Pekikaro, the person who wrote the foreword for the book. A lot of times we're made to feel that things aren't really as we see them, or that we're imagining things, or that we're just misunderstanding what's happening. And often that's not the case, right? And so I think we really have to be able to make a compelling argument for what we're seeing, what we're experiencing, and the reality of what's happening.
Very true. Yeah, I think I've heard some people say, that's not it. You're just overthinking, or, come on, that wasn't really what happened. It was like, no, it really was, So yeah, you're right. Sometimes we sit and we think, well, maybe I did, overthink that, or maybe I did. Maybe I just need to chill. But it's not the case. It's not the case at all. It is happening, and it's real.
It's real. It's real.
Yeah.
And I, in the introduction, Tammy, I say, one, you're not crazy. This is happening.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And two, it's really important to know that you're not alone, that it's happening to other people, because the first place we go is shame and guilt and, imposter syndrome. I really don't have what it takes to be here. I'm not good enough, and we look to try to solve a problem that we can't solve. Okay. And so that's why it's so important to set realistic expectations and to really have a plan. We often are without the benefit of mentors and sponsors in an organization that we can look to figure out the way, to show us the way, right? And certainly to look to if we misstep or falter, okay? Which we all do as humans.
Right.
And so things that are just forgivable mistakes or errors for some people, you look the other way, for us can be an indictment, okay? And so we really have got to plan in a very meaningful and strategic way, just like you're running a business,
Right.
how we're going to manage our careers.
So true. And that's a good segue into my next question, which is, do you think we should always speak up, or is it important to know when to pick your battles?
We always have to speak up.
Mm.
Yes, you do need to know when to pick your battles. And I say that, with reference to timing and who you're going to talk with perhaps, and how you're going to address things. But we can't let things go, because when you let things go, you're sending a message that it's okay.
Right.
Right. And so you always have to address it. And that may not mean, having a conversation on the day of, or confronting. There are all kinds of ways to do it. And we talk about some of that in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think you want to let anything go.
Sure. Yeah, I think, and I'll put myself in that category too, like that guilt and that shame, or even that fear of, someone, just saying, oh, just be quiet about it. Like, it doesn't matter, and that this is not going to help. So it's like, okay, I'm just going to stay in my corner then, because nobody's there to help. And I can't speak up for myself. Like you said earlier, we need allies sometimes. So it's hard.
You can't speak up for yourself. And I'm not asking anyone to take challenges and undue risks,
Mm-hmm.
but there's always a way. What happens is that we are typically reacting instead of responding.
Right.
And it's because we're blindsided. And that's why I go back to the idea of what I said earlier about setting the right expectations, because you really can anticipate some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. We choose to ignore it because we'd like to believe that the playing field is level and we're all the same and all of that. And if that's the case in your particular environment, great. Plan for the worst, hope for the best, right? But the reality is we have a huge opportunity to be more proactive,
right,
when it comes to being, better stewards of our own circumstances. And so once you assume that positioning, once you assume that posture, then you'll have more clarity around how best to respond. And you'll have more tools, if you will, to work with, to be able to address circumstances in a meaningful way.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. The practice of self-advocacy is a prominent theme throughout the book. Why is this so important?
It goes back to what I said about not having mentors and sponsors. Okay. You have to be willing to be an agent for yourself. Okay. And just being able to kind of read the room, know who the players are, who the influencers are, the people that you need to establish certain relationships with, know where people stand, right? And you really need that data in order to protect yourself and to act in your own best interest. But as you said, no one else is going to do it for you.
Right.
All right. And so, when you apply for that $300,000 a year position and that lofty title, all right, realize that that's your day job, right? Your side hustle is to make sure that you are looking out for all the ancillary stuff, the relationships and the politics and all of those things, and practicing that self-advocacy.
Wow. Why should diversity and inclusion matter to organizational leaders?
So when people ask me questions like this, I always make sure I follow the money. And I just want to make sure I get this right. So I want to say, beyond a sense of belonging, okay, it really is good for the bottom line. Study of companies that talked about their commitment to diversity and inclusion revealed that companies that are in the top quartile for ethnic and cultural diversity were 33% more likely to have industry-leading profitability, 33%. And those in the bottom quartile were 29% likely not to have industry-leading profitability. Yeah, they were 29% less likely. Yeah.
Wow. And
so when you think about your client base, your customer base, which is highly diverse, right? Your employees, your staff, your organization should be reflective of people who do business with you, right? And often it's not. And so it really is important to when you think about not just, well, the end game, the end goal is profitability, of course, if you're in business, but when you think about really connecting with your customers and really being intentional about providing optimum service and products, then you really want to make sure that you are benefiting from all voices in the room and all perspectives.
Yeah. Now, I know we have a lot of IT followers from Omega, which is amazing. Representation in the IT industry has been minimal over the past decade, especially for senior technical roles. Do you think attitudes about diversity and inclusion have an impact on recruiting?
Diversity and inclusion has an impact on recruiting across the board, not just in technology, but I have some figures to share with you for the technology space also. But I'll just say that in general, people are more comfortable with people who are like them, okay? And for many people, still hard to believe, we're an anomaly. And so they tend to gravitate more toward people that look like them, okay? The other thing is when you think about technical talent, you think about people who have come through institutions of higher learning, perhaps that we don't always have access to and things like that. But it doesn't mean that there's not a space for us, a larger space for us. I happened to come across some data looking at Silicon Valley and just in general, some of the larger social media outlets, I'll say, the average percentage of Black employees for tech jobs is somewhere between 2% and 4% of the workforce. Okay. Yeah. And so when you think about the degree to which we are users of technology, like everybody else, right? That's pretty grim. That's pretty grim. But again, it goes back to that, what we talked about earlier, having to work twice as hard and be that much better. Yep. There's a lot of second guessing. And you can also find that in chapter 4 in the story about William, okay? There's a lot of second guessing about whether or not we really are capable or competent. And so in a lot of cases, I think it's considered a risk, to take a chance on minority talent, particularly at higher levels.
Wow.
It's unfortunate.
For myself, I've always, I don't know if I use it as a defense mechanism or whatever the case may be. I've always said that, our skin color, right, specifically for African Americans, we walk into a room and our color already speaks for us, right? Which is, it's unfair. It's not good, right? But that's just the world we're surrounded with and we live in. So my color already speaks for me once I walk into a room. So now, like we've discussed, I have to now speak, so people can be like, oh, wow, okay, you have this background. Oh, this is what you do. Like I have to have you speak to me before you accept me, So, I mean, how do we manage that? How do we deal with that?
You really struck a nerve when you said that, because I'll let people guess about my age. You do the math if you look at my journey in the book. But nevertheless, at this stage of my life, with all that I've accomplished, people still talk to me as if I just graduated from high school. And, I get these questions. Well, where did you go to school? And how did you do that? And I can run it down. But when I compare those introductions to introductions that I overhear with people who don't look like me, it's very different, Yeah. And oh my goodness, people are really accepted on site,
yes,
because of their appearance and because of where they look. And, not mentioning any names, but we've seen a few pretty significant scandals recently, right? Involving people who have really led the public astray, led investors and stakeholders astray to the tune of billions of dollars. We never would have been able to get away with some of those things, right? Because we would have had to prove old saying 6 ways to Sunday, right? That that we could get it done.
Yep.
But pretty much on an ask, for our counterparts, for our white counterparts, it's a given. So you're right, and it's unfortunate, and it's painful. Let's be honest, right? Because as soon as people look at you, they're making judgments.
Exactly.
And I don't know how we overcome that. I don't know. That's another, it's not something we can do by ourselves. That's something that we need everybody to participate in. So
thank you. Yeah. Whether members of your primary or secondary audience, how do you want readers to use this book?
I want readers to use this book as a tool to help them to make better choices. I had a very powerful conversation yesterday with a client, and I don't even talk to the clients about the book, right? I'm not promoting the book among clients as I have sessions and things like that. But this is a client who happened to see information about the book on LinkedIn and went out and purchased the book. And when I entered the session, I was blown away. Started answering the questions at the end of each chapter. There are reflection questions and exercises and things like that.
Yeah.
And I was so moved by how well she was working through the material.
Nice.
And the awareness that it created for her, and also how it informed her ability to make different choices and different decisions. So that in and of itself, that was textbook on how I'd like people to use this as a tool.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm sure that must have felt really good for you, because, reaching one person, reaching 20, it makes a difference.
Oh my goodness, it does. And the other thing is, as I said earlier, this can be a lonely place when you're going through this, because you're second guessing yourself and you're questioning what you could have done differently. I invite people to go to the website, access-denied.net, and visit the Let's Talk page, because what we'll be doing as part of this project is convening forums by industry, by career level, because it's really important for people to have a place to come and just to lay this stuff down, right? To have conversations with people who look like them, who've had the same experiences, but more importantly, to come up with solutions.
Yes.
As I said to somebody in another interview, I said, I didn't write this as a somebody done me wrong, okay? I'm not just sitting here complaining about what has happened to me. Yeah. I want this to be actionable. I want people to use this to help them move forward. And so the forums that we're going to be convening is another way to do that.
And it's such a great conversation. And I always say, this is just the beginning, right? I feel like I've said that over and over too, even in different conversations I've had. This is just the beginning, but every step we take matters, every action we take matters. And this is something that's not going to be solved overnight, right? We've been dealing with it, we're dealing with it now, and we're most likely going to be continuing to deal with it for a long time. But having tools like your book are such great stepping stones for us to take and really get to where we hope to be one day, where everybody can get along and not have to worry about certain disparities and discrimination,
That's my hope. That's my hope. Unfortunately, I don't expect to see that in my lifetime necessarily. It'd be great if it happens. But one thing I would also like listeners and readers to think about, a lot of this, when you talked about, why my thoughts about having to work twice as hard and things like that, this is embedded in our history. Yeah. And I think it's important for everybody to take some time to reflect on the historical perspective and things that have happened over a long period of time that have been systemic and that have been continuous.
Yes.
You go to any of the outlets to buy the book, Amazon or Books A Million or Barnes and Noble, you'll see that the price of the paperback is $16.19, and that's not an accident, okay? And for people who don't know what that means, please look it up. Okay. But the reason I did that is because it's the beginning, right? It's the beginning of this dark and unfortunate historical experience that we've had as Black Americans, okay?
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for people to understand the origin and the significance of things that have happened over a long period of time and align that with what we're experiencing today still, okay?
Yep.
Wow.
Thank you so much for giving us your time and giving us some insights into the book. And I want everybody out there listening to us to go and grab that book. It's so knowledgeable, such a joy to read. And we thank you, Brenda, for your time.